Gnosticism is possibly the most complex religious system developed by man. It is more than simple Epicureanism, and more than a reaction to Christianity. Find out about this complex religion on this episode of Ancient Egypt and the Bible. Gnosticism is complicated. It is the product of Egyptian and Platonic thought whose roots extend back nearly 1,200 years before Christ. This video might feel like drinking out of a fire hose. So if you don't understand everything that I throw at you today, don't feel overwhelmed. And if Gnosticism seems extremely complex, that's because it is. There are even Gnostic scholars out there who have failed to grasp the essence of Gnostic belief. So, if you don't understand this, it's okay. You're in good company. However, we've done these sets of videos to act as a primer. It is designed to give you a foundation so that you can do further study on the subject. Now, the first thing that you need to understand about Gnosticism is that it is an elite religion, designed to be intentionally complex, so as to separate their followers from those who don't understand. The thinking here is that if you cannot understand Gnostic teachings, it is because only those who are inducted into the mysteries can understand its secrets. So, what is Gnosticism? Gnosticism is often characterized as the Christianity that lost in the race of rival Christianities. And we will evaluate that claim as we go along. But as a working definition, we will posit that Gnosticism is a religious system that has as its central tenet salvation through secret knowledge. Now, Gnosticism is much more than this, but this introductory definition gives us something to build upon. Gnosticism appears in the writings of the early church fathers, who are the apostles of the apostles, as the great rival of early Christian faith, and appears roughly contemporaneous with it. This fact has led many to speculate on the relationship between Christianity and the Gnostics. Now, why would we want to study a religion that seems to have died out in the 4th century AD? Why does Gnosticism still matter to us today? The first reason is to engage critics of historic Christianity, who point to Gnosticism as a basis for comparison. Much of the historic status of Christianity hinges upon the nature of the conflict between early Christians and the Gnostics. Rudolf Bultmann suggested that Christianity was a development from Mandean Gnostics originating in Mesopotamia. Elaine Pagels suggested that there were many Christianities running around the landscape, and modern Christianity won the war by, quote, suppressing Gnosticism, end quote. For Pagels, there is no difference between Gnosticism and Christianity. They are equal Christianities. The second reason why it matters to study Gnosticism is because Gnosticism never really died out. Gnosticism is seductive on many levels, and has a way of adapting itself to new religious and cultural contexts. The success of Gnosticism lies in the fact that it is infinitely adaptable. There have been Zoroastrian, Mandean, and several sects of Jewish and Christian Gnostics. Gnosticism survived through early modern Europe as Hermetic thought, and survives into modern times. In fact, there is probably more Gnosticism surviving today than at any time in the past 2,000 years. For example, the Valley of Healing is a modern Gnostic group. So the issues surrounding Gnosticism affects Christians and society today. The third reason is because Gnosticism and Christianity were born out of long religious trajectories. Christianity emerged from 1200 years of Israelite religion. Gnosticism emerged from 1200 years of Egyptian religion. By understanding how Gnosticism came to be, we might gain some understanding as to how Christian thought developed, and more importantly, how it differentiated itself from other competing religious systems. Now, before we can begin to discuss what Gnostics believe, we need to talk about how Gnostics view the cosmos and creation. Because much of what Gnostics believe stems from their cosmology. For Gnostics, in the beginning was a god of pure light called the monad. That god created more gods, called aeons, that had less light than the original god. Those gods then created more gods that had even less light. This continued until a god was created that had almost no light and was almost pure evil. This god was called the demiurge, a Greek term that means craftsman. Now, all of this is based on the Platonic notion of forms or ideas. Let's say we have a cube in the physical world. Then it stood to reason that there must also be a cube represented in the spiritual world, because the spirit world, which they call the pleroma, is more real than the physical world. Ultimately, the form of the spirit world is the more real existence than that of the physical world. And that idealized form exists on a higher spiritual plane. And you can go up various planes. You have a cube in this world, where you then have a cube in the spiritual world, which then stems from a square in the spirit world. And all these forms lead up to one ultimate form, from which all other forms come from, called the monad. This principle of form or ideas can also be extended to people or gods. When it is extended to gods, as the Gnostics do, they are called aeons or hypostases. Now, for the Gnostic, the demiurge then creates the world. The physical world for the Gnostics is corrupt and evil because the demiurge is incapable of creating any other kind of world. Pythagorean philosophy had a demiurge, but oddly, Greek religion did not. Craftsman creator deities are, however, part of, say, the Egyptian religious milieu. For example, Khnum creates mankind on a potter's wheel out of clay. And as each of the gods is created, sparks fly off. Sparks of light become angels. Sparks of darkness become demons. And some unfortunate sparks become trapped against their will in human bodies. And only the weakest of sparks become trapped in the most corrupt bodies, which we know as women. This presents the Gnostics with the perennial problem of how can women be saved? And then finally, below the earth is a whirlpool, where souls too wretched to become women, or who die without help, of the Gnostics become lost. So that covers Gnostic cosmology. But what do the Gnostics believe? There are 8 distinctives that are common across many Gnostic groups, but these are by no means universal. So not every Gnostic group believed each one of these, but these are 8 commonly shared beliefs. First, the Gnostic idea of God is a hierarchical henotheism, and the creator was called the demiurge. Strictly speaking, Gnosticism is a henotheism. Gnostics believe that there are many gods in the universe, but they only owe their allegiance to one of them. But that allegiance is never to the creator god, the demiurge. Within the pantheon, all the gods of Gnosticism are fundamentally equal, except for the content of light they contain. Now, you would be tempted to think that the Gnostics would owe their allegiance to the god with the most light, but that's not necessarily the case. Think of the gods of Gnosticism as specialists, not general practitioners. So, just like you would go to a GP or visit a dermatologist, ear, nose, and throat specialist, or an oncologist, a Gnostic could pledge their allegiance to aeons that specialize in wisdom, truth, light, repentance, or personalities such as Messiah, Christ, Jesus, Yahweh, and Adonai. This is in stark contrast to the Judeo-Christian view of monotheism. Second, the physical world and the body are corrupt. The physical universe and all of creation are evil and the source of all corruption. The Apocalypse of Peter portrays Christ on the cross, quote, glad and laughing, end quote, because he became a being released from the flesh. As a result, the Gnostic is constantly seeking release from the body. The Gnostic mind sees nothing redeeming or beneficial with the flesh. The flesh and the world are weak, evil, illusionary, and to be forever disdained. This, too, contrasts Orthodox Christianity, which says that when God created the world, it was very good. Genesis 1:31. Third, no incarnation of deity and no resurrection. Sorry, Gnosticism has no Christmas or Easter. While the incarnation and resurrection of Christ are important to Christianity, to the Gnostic, they are utter blasphemy. In the Gnostic mindset, a god would never condescend to become entrapped in corrupt human flesh. With Christian Gnostic sects, Christ was not a god. Or, in some Gnostic writings, Christ is portrayed as an aeon that manifests, but not in the flesh. Likewise, there is no resurrection of the body for the dead. The point of Gnosticism is to shed the flesh, not replace it. The treatise on the resurrection replaces the physical resurrection with a spiritual resurrection, which is inaugurated by secret knowledge. Fourth, secret knowledge saves. By learning the secret knowledge that only the Gnostics can teach, can you unlock the mysteries of the universe. Knowledge is the key to transcend the world to return to the gods. Only those who are inducted into the mysteries are said to be able to understand the secret knowledge. This is, again, in stark contrast to Orthodox Christianity. Christianity is about who you know, Jesus. Gnosticism is about what you know. Those who don't know the secret knowledge cannot ascend into the heavens when they die, and are sucked into the whirlpool that lies below the earth and are lost forever. Fifth, antinomian ethic. Antinomianism is a 50-cent word that means without law or lawless. Because the world is already totally evil, it does not matter how you behave. For the Gnostic, their behavior cannot make it any better or worse. So, ethics doesn't matter. Gnosticism is indifferent to morality at best. And this is contra to the Christian message of, if you love him, you'll keep his commandments, end quote. In the document on the baptism, quote, the first baptism is for the forgiveness of sins, end quote. Now, at first blush, you might think that this sounds very Christian, but you quickly discover that sin is redefined as the ignorance that inhibits, quote, upward progression, that is, our exodus from the world into the aeon, end quote. The cosmology of Gnosis affects the ethics of Gnosis. Sixth, magical worldview and practice of magic. The practice of magic was widespread across the Mediterranean during the first couple centuries AD. And there's ample evidence of Christians using magic during this period. However, much of the, quote, secret knowledge that was passed from teacher to student was in the form of magical incantations that manipulated the gods for higher access into the pleroma. The collection of magical incantations could secure a spot closer to the light and further away from the material world. This is a good thing if you're a Gnostic. The Gospel of the Egyptians, a late Sethite text, used magical incantations by revealing the hidden names of the aeons. For example, Ayin, Ayin, Ea, Ea, Ea. These hidden names are often derived from acrostics, equidistance letter sequencing, or through the manipulation of pronunciation. The use of hidden names as a means of controlling divinity is an ancient Near Eastern practice that extends back to at least the time of the Pyramid texts. For example, Pyramid Text 534, where the gods are assuaged from their bad coming by use of their hidden names. Seventh, syncretism. Gnosticism had the unique ability to appropriate the writings of other religions and turn them towards Gnostic teachings. Any religious trappings could be assimilated into Gnosticism's own mythological system. They adapted baptism, the Eucharist, and worship services. The reason they could do this is because of its allegorical hermeneutic. Eighth, allegorical hermeneutic. So much of the success of Gnosticism depended upon this one critical distinctive that deserves a bit of special attention, which is why we'll discuss it in detail in part 2 of this series. In the exegesis on the soul, the writer takes portions of the Bible dealing with adultery, for example, Hosea 2, 2-7, and Ezekiel 16, 23-26, and interprets the woman of the passage as a metaphor for the soul, quote, speaking not just of the prostitution of the body, but especially the soul, end quote. In fact, the difficulties that surround the study of Gnosticism are largely caused by its allegorical hermeneutic, because it's not always clear how the Gnostics are reading their texts. Anyway, that's all for this episode. I hope you enjoyed and learned something today. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time on Ancient Egypt and the Bible.